whatever happens down, if you put you put certain restrictions on certain species, it ends up affecting us a lot because, as I mentioned, it's very expensive to live up there. We still have to provide, for our housing. We've got we have to, our fuel costs are crazy, and any food that we have to find some way to pay for all that. And there have been movements around that have really affected how all across Canada live. The most recent one, and a really big one, is climate change and polar bears. And we work with we're starting to work with some organizations such as WWF. They're starting to come into our area, and we're finding some common ground with at least some of the organizations who have conservation as on their agenda, but they also look at the people, not just the wildlife. There are some organizations though that just won't go in. They will. We brought them in the area. We talked to them, try to give them information on what we're doing, and they still don't believe in any type of harvesting or any kind of possible commercial activities out of that harvesting of animals. Anyways, I'll let John talk, and maybe if there's more time after, we'll try to get more into it.
Thanks, Larry. This map here shows 4 distinct areas. The one where Larry is from, the orange. The middle one from the yellow is Nunavut. The green one is Nunavik. And the one way on your right hand side, the gray one. These are 4 major land claim streams that have been settled over the last 30-year period. And this sort of forms the basis of the protection of Inuit rights, social, cultural, harvesting, rights to the land, to use the land and wildlife, and to continue on with the culture. And this is a legally binding process. In each of the areas that we look at here, in this area here, with a number of communities from this developed region, they have already, from the local level, they have hunters, trappers, committees, organizations that are from the local level. They also have wider regional bodies of representatives from each of the communities that have regional representation for environmental and wildlife conservation that's driven by the developed agreement as well as the developed involvement. And in that same area, there's another group that's from the agreement that takes care of the economic, social development aspects. So it's shared between environmental and social economic. Larry works more on the wildlife environmental side of those organizations within the land claim. And in this land claim here, we have representatives, say, on home management boards reflected in the land claim according to the signatories to those agreements. So you can't have non-signatories working within the region making decisions for the people. It has to be based on the signatories, whether it's a management board or an impact review board. Any of those decisions that affect the Navajo must be based on the decisions of the signatories. So it does also include the Navajo of that area. For this area here, the larger area, the largest sort of land claim in Canada, in Nunavut, equally here with all these 25 or 26 communities that we have in this region, there are local hunters, trappers, organizations. In this area here of Baffin, we have a Inuit association of communities called the Pictan Inuit Association. In this association here, the Tavalik Inuit Association land area, and this one we have the Inuit Communities Association that represents the Inuit specifically. Like in this area here and this area here, you have signatories between the federal, territorial, and well as this and this one over here, they have stakeholder-based agreements, but the Inuit are involved in each one of them as important parts of the decision-making process. And that goes down to the local level, to the regional, and up to the broader level. And so when it comes to wildlife and environment conservation, we have this sort of system in place of co-management, etc., and Indigenous involvement directly into these decision-making processes. I mean, it's not a perfect world right now, but you know, there's a lot more improvement to be had, but people are working away at it. Then we have a number of processes in, say, the co-management process where they hold hearings for decisions around quotas, total allowable catch, and so forth, including any research that looks at the numbers of total population of a particular species like caribou and whatnot, where these hearings look at the numbers, the research, and the knowledge that's been put into it. And we have people from Anglos coming in and making their responses to the information and to the reports that are going into the hearings, like WWF and Sierra Club in our sort of part of the country, and others as well. In fact, when we talk about hearings around the latest proposals around polar bear quotas or a whale quota or a caribou quota, we will have communities speaking about their own interests in those numbers, whether or not they're the best numbers or not, whether they're correct or incorrect based on their own knowledge. You'll have governments also doing their own proposal according to the research that they've compiled and their analyses. And you have ACOs coming in making their comments about what the numbers are and what the decision should be. So some of the, for instance, in this area here called the King Basin and Baffin Bay area, out here we have a subpopulation of polar bear as well as populations of whale. In the case of polar bear, we've had many interventions by WWF. They're probably the most active in terms of interventions, where they would call on for a moratorium of hunting, which is, sorry, that's not the way it's going to happen. The communities don't believe that that's the way it should happen. Because based on the numbers, they think that, no, we don't need to have a moratorium. So part of the worry that many people have in the communities is that these groups will always call for some kind of moratorium or some kind of ban, or it seems to be the way to go in terms of calling on something. Without respect for the systems that are already in place, agreed to by the people, and need to be implemented. The only problem is with these ACOs is that they have no accountability for people in the territories. You don't belong there, and they come from down south, and they come in there and say whatever they want to say about, and their opinions about what they want to do. Including in this area, of course, there's a big, huge, for the last probably decades, 20 years, about the pipeline developments around there. We have a lot of Anglos making their comments about what they think about pipelines being built from this area here going south. When in fact a lot of routes here going south as well, a lot of other routes going south have been negotiating land claims agreements based on the possibility of pipelines going through there. So while there is an intention by Anglos to look at the conservation issues and the environmental protection areas, I think it's very important that what's happened so far is that there's always been this separation between the Indigenous peoples and this particular context, at least, of their territories and their agreements, and the Anglos want to speak on their own behalf about what they think is the right thing to do. I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of people from WWF who are now, who have since set up an office here in Iqaluit and another one here in Nunavik for their polar program that they've now moved from Norway, I believe, to Canada. And one of the areas that we're looking at right now is this, there's this ice area over here that straddles or goes between Ellesmere in Canada and Greenland. And they're looking at it as the last ice area. And it has to do with, of course, climate change. And there's always some implication on polar bears. They've met with Inuit organizations, they made presentations to us in Iqaluit, to gone to Greenland, to move to Greenland, to look at what kind of support they can get there for the last ice area message or concept. They've been working with Inuit Circuit Board Council in Canada as well. ITK, our organization, has not engaged in this process. We're sort of seeing what will happen. But they've engaged the organization that looks after this particular area called QIA. So, but anyway, one of the things that we have to look at is, accountability, representation. The fact that the people already have agreements in place. And when people come in without any sort of those things in place, then there's going to be problems. And we don't want sort of debates coming in that are unnecessary. And especially when groups make claims that polar bears are endangered, that's a falsehood. That's ethically false. And to me, that's bad for conservation. And that's bad for the relationships that should be built with people. There's no dialogue based on that type of rhetoric. They should be understanding the facts about these issues from the people and from their knowledge. Thank you.
The Constitution doesn't recognize or doesn't describe the indigenous people as indigenous people. The Constitution was some people who, I don't know if there are some interest, watered down the term indigenous people and then they changed it into vulnerable and marginalized. Something that trying to do some changes at the grassroots. We are trying to do some lobbying at the indigenous people and see how the government can at least give us that status of indigenous people, just like other people in the world. Instead of just saying that you are vulnerable and marginalized, then you are classed, you are put in the same category with the people who are disabled, the women. So that's how the Kenyan Constitution describes indigenous people. So the term indigenous people is not there. What is there is vulnerable and marginalized. And as much as we the time of the year, hearing a lot of things about the indigenous people, that is becoming a challenge to us as civil society organizations, especially at the country level. Because if the state is not recognizing you, and when we go further into this issue of conservation, that's where we have a lot of trouble in Kenya. First of all, the policies that govern forest resources do not recognize forest dwellers as people who live in the forest. In fact, the policies assume that everybody's was moved out of the forest and people live outside the forest. The only luck is that we managed to resist all these years, and we are inside the forest. But the law states that it is only recognizing people who live outside the forest. So, in essence, it says that we are not supposed to be there, we are there illegally. And that has brought a lot of problems. We have a project by World Bank as a natural resource management project. We had some issues with them, so they say we want to see how we can assist you in terms of livelihoods. But I told them, okay, you want to assist us inside the forest, inside our land. But if you are not going to address our issues inside the land, then we don't need your money. We told them it's better we stay out of issues. So we had some dispute with them for the last 3 years, or 4 years. It is, the whole project is ending next year and they have done nothing in Mount Elgon. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing. Where there is the issue of the end race. The end race case was passed in the African Commission, but it has been staying for the last 3 years. There's no development, it's just in the government, no steps are taken to give back the land that illegally taken out from the NRS people. So, I don't know who is going to rescue us from all these status. But what we are saying ahead is that we have a lot of things that we need to do as pertains self-determination, and maybe following the recommendations that are there in the UNEID. I am not prepared for this presentation, but just quickly that's how I can be. Thank you very much.
I think that's a huge issue for conservation organizations, is what do you do when a state that you're, or governments that you're operating in those territories don't recognize Indigenous peoples. It happens in Canada. We have an example in the north where land claims exist, but in other parts of Canada, the state does not recognize Indigenous rights. And that can be a huge concern. If conservation organizations take the state's lead, that they are also ignoring Indigenous rights. So there's some tough choices to be made. Our next speaker is Florina Lopez, who is Kuna from Panama. Florina.
Muy buenos días. Antes que todo, estoy saludando en mi lengua Kuna, soy del pueblo Kuna de Panamá y bueno, actualmente estoy coordinando una red de mujeres indígenas sobre biodiversidad en América Latina y el Caribe, y a la vez trabajando en la Fundación para la Promoción de la Sociedad Indígena, donde hemos tenido mucha experiencia justamente con las grandes ONGs de conservación con la cual hemos estado trabajando y que nos ha dejado mucha experiencia y muchas lecciones aprendidas, y también con el afán de mejorar este trabajo que estamos haciendo en conjunto para la conservación, para poder desarrollar nuestras formas de trabajo, pues quisiera presentarle esta experiencia que hemos tenido a nivel de Panamá, sobre todo como pueblo cubano. Sabemos todos aquí, bueno, se reitera nuevamente, pues de que justamente donde mayor biodiversidad existe es en los territorios indígenas. y que desde siempre como pueblos indígenas hemos mantenido, hemos desarrollado, hemos conservado esta naturaleza. Para nosotros es nuestra vida, es la madre tierra donde día a día nos nutrimos. Y justamente con este objetivo hemos luchado para poder mantener este control de nuestras tierras, de nuestros recursos, y de que de alguna manera ese acompañamiento que se nos da en el tema pues sea de una manera justa, de una manera equilibrada, de una manera en que podríamos decir que del otro lado se pueda entender esta forma de vida y de trabajo que hemos desarrollado en nuestros pueblos indígenas. Un poco hablar de los antecedentes, pues desde hace muchas décadas hemos visto cómo a nivel internacional, también a nivel nacional, muchas organizaciones que trabajan en el tema de conservación han llegado a nuestros territorios con el afán, sobre todo con algunas malas experiencias que hemos tenido, porque hay que hablar también del lado malo como también del lado